Okay, so what we did is that we created one service, we created one component. Yeah, I'll push it. We created one service, we created one component, and into that component we have added or injected the service. Dependency injection is here, and we are using one of the method of the service get names, which is this over here. Now this component would be having one more method. This component would be having one more method. Let me have one more row over here, and let me delete this. Right, let me delete this, and here I would be having input type is text. Here input type is text. Then I would be having input type is equals to button, right? And on the click of this button, or just for the styling purpose, you can have class is equals to btn, and btn what? Primary, right? Then you would be having some value is equals to add, right? Then it would be having one value which is nothing but add. And on the click of this button, right, on the click of this button, right, on the click of this button, your component would be having one method which is nothing but add new. So here you would be having this, and here I can add this dot remote dot, what you can say, add name is the function, and to that you can pass nm. So remote is the class. That remote class is having one function which is nothing but the add name. That function you are calling over here just like this. So I'm going to call add new function, right? I'm going to call add new function over here, and to this add new function I'm going to pass value of, say, hash nm, right, local reference, and to this function I can pass nm dot value, right? I can pass add new nm dot value over here, right? Let us see output of this what would be, right? I can say rrr add it, it's getting added to the list. Hello, you can see it is getting added to the list, right? Now in the future there might be need is that I would be replicate this component, so I would be needing this component twice, or there is another component, one more component. That component is also have been injected the same service. That components also have injected the service, right? So you will see something like this. Here I am going to say AAA, let's say add. Can you see AAA is getting added over here but not here, which clearly says that for every component, this is one component, this is another component, for every component the provider tab will create separate object of the service. Can you see here? You have one component, and to that component this provider is going to be called twice, right? This provider is going to be called twice, so two instances of the remote service would be getting called. Two instances of the remote service would be getting called. That's the problem. This is the problem, because you have separate data set for this one service, for this component another service. So if I update any data over here, that is going to be get updated to this and not the global state. So global state wouldn't be maintained by means of this structure. So this is not a problem. This might be business need, but most of the cases would need to share the data, right? Would need to share the data. In that case you don't need this thing. Let me comment out this thing, very first thing. I don't need to have this structure. So providers need to be, or this service need to be injected at the application level. Can you see here, providers tag is there, providers key is there. Over here you can add remote service. That's it. So in this case, right, so in this case application level scoping is there. Now see AAA, can you see here also added, here also added. In this case both the components are using same reference or same object of the service, same reference of the service, and this is inter component communication. By means of this data or by means of this service you are communicating between two components, right? So how you will communicate on the two operations, see here. So you have remote service, right, we have remote service, right, we have remote service, and here at the class level I would be having object of, right, I would be having object of emitter em, and here I can say event emitter of type string. I'm going to emit the data of type string, and here you can say this dot em is equals to new event emitter, this thing of type any, sorry, of type string. It is going to emit the events of type this thing. So I would be having one function. I can write one function over here, say publish this nm of type string. Publish is nm of type string, right? So here I can say this dot em dot emit, and here you can pass nm over here. You have emitted. Now I would be having one more method, subscribe. Those components are needing these events, they need to subscribe over here, and here I am going to pass callback cb callback, right, of type any. Here I am going to pass one function, right, here I am going to pass one function, and that function like this, see this dot em dot subscribe, right, and you can pass this callback function over here. If you want to emit, you are going to call publish method. If you want to receive the events, you would be having subscribe method. So in this case, very first thing, I would be creating one component, say rem2, right, I would be creating one component rem2, right, and in the rem2, so rem1 component, rem2 component, and over here what we would be having is that app rem2, and here you can have app rem2, right, app rem2, app rem1, app rem2, these are my components. And in the app rem2 remote 2 over here, app rem2, let me have some basic styling in the app rem2 here, right. So I don't need this, even I don't need this, right. So here I am going to display the emitted or changed name, right. Here I am going to have changed name, and you have already injected the service at the class level. Then here I am going to say get the service remote of type remote service. I have got that, and in the constructor, right, remote this dot remote dot what you can say subscribe, and from here you can have one function nm arrow, right? So at the class level I can have nm of type string over here, nm of type string over here. So here I can say this dot nm, right? Here, sorry, variable name is changed name, right? nm, so changed name is equals to nm. Likewise, so I have passed one inline function over there. See, so whenever someone is going to publish, this function is going to be called subscribe. Now I'll go to the rem1 component, and on the click of this rem1 you are adding it, right? And here simply I can call this dot remote dot publish an object of nm. So those components who have subscribed, right, who have subscribed for that particular event, all those will receive, right, will receive the name, and they will do their business logic accordingly. When you see the code, you will get to know more things. Somewhere semicolon is missing. Okay, subscribe callback, this over here. Remote service.ts is expected, cannot find the name. Remote service.ts, remote service.ts, remote service.ts, cannot find the name. But where? 32, line number 32 here. Okay, so there is a no component. When I am going to say AAA and add, can you see this AAA is going to be transferred to the remote 2 component, that is nothing but this component, this one component. So let me draw it pictorially, right? Intercomponent communication, I had told you at that time, at the time of service you would be getting the precise way, right? So this is your one component, say remote 1 component, rem 1 component, and this is your another component which is nothing but rem 2 component, right? These are your two components, rem 1, rem 2. Both are dependent on one service. So this is nothing but your remote service. You can say this service is called as remote service. This service is called as remote service, right? So this service is having one publish method. That publish method you are calling over here. Same service is having one more method, subscribe method, and this subscription has been made over here. So you are publishing, right, and here you are subscribing by means of event emitter. By means of event emitter, all these things are happening. So in between them there is a one service called as remote. In between this component and this component there is one service called as remote, and by means of that remote service you are emitting, and another one is subscribing. Remember that these two components are having in common, which is nothing but this remote service. Remote service is in common between these two components. So one component is publishing on the click over here. One component is publishing on the click, and another component is subscribing at the class level, and that's why it will go on receiving the events. Right.